Live from the Blitzball Stadium, it's Casual Compliance! Welcome back to Casual Compliance, everyone. We have a very special episode today. We have been gifted all of this amazing stuff from Wizards of the Coast. They've given us a whole bunch of really cool Final Fantasy X MTG product.
Yeah, somehow every booster is only Final Fantasy X cards. I don't know how they did that.
We're anti-Final Fantasy 7 here. Final Fantasy X where it's at. And today, we actually are looking specifically at the Counter Blitz Commander deck in what we're calling the Precon Precon. This is a pre-conversation about your Precon. We're going to be looking specifically at the deck where it says add counters and then pass them around. We're going to give you suggestions about maybe ways you could change the deck. If you look through the cards and think there's things that aren't doing what they need to do, we can take them out and we're going to suggest what you can put in there as well.
Yeah. Hey, Gramps, what is Final Fantasy X about and what the hell is Blitzball?
If you have abandonment issues where your father has left you and disappeared, so you get really heavily into a sport and play that sport so well that accidentally sin comes to take over your planet, you lose your mind, go and find another sports team, hype them up to win, and then end up having to kill your dad at the end, you'd really like Final Fantasy X.
Sin as in the concept of sin?
So Blitzball is a sport with a round ball.
Cool.
What you do is it's in a water orb, and what you do is like you it's like football and soccer and Gaelic football all together.
How many people are in this wet ball?
Oh, there's like 4 per team, I think. 5 per team.
2 teams?
Yeah, 2 teams. And then you're going for goals. Like the coolest fucking openings. How old was I when I started playing Final Fantasy X? I think I was 10 years old when I first played Final Fantasy X, something like that.
Okay.
And the coolest scene of the main character, Tidus, people think Tidus.
Okay.
They're wrong. Is like jumping out of the fucking water to do like a scissor kick, and then he sees Sin. He's like, oh fuck, here we go again. And then like everything happens all at once.
Okay.
It's a rad sport. It was the coolest sport ever. I think it's why I like AFL football so much.
How much of Final Fantasy X is made up of Blitzball?
I think it's 2 mini games.
How long do they take?
If you're really shit at it like I was, forever.
How long would they take you now?
Not long, like 10 minutes each. But the thing is, it's all about, like, the whole thing is when you start the game and you're the Blitzball player and you're famous in Zanarkand, great space, you're the player on that team. And then when you get transported into a post-apocalyptic Zanarkand, you meet Walker.
Okay. I'm seeing some of these words on the back of the box. Yeah,
you'll meet Walker.
Yeah.
And Walker is the captain of the Besaid Aurochs, who are the worst Blitzball team in the game.
Okay.
And you are their star player from the Zanarkand Abes.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
There's a lot of proper nouns I've never heard before.
Fuck, I that's from the top of the fucking dome. I have just played it again. You can see in our interview with Tomlin, like that I was going back into it. So, but I think I've done pretty well there.
Okay.
So this is a sport.
Yes.
This is a sport where you are passing the ball around to score points, kind of like soccer or AFL in a water dome. Most
ball-based sports.
Exactly. Yep. And then what's really interesting about this is this passing mechanic. That's going to be really cool to see how they do that flavorfully, if they can at all.
Yeah.
Adding the counters seems more like a combat thing in Final Fantasy. If you look at the main character, Tidus, in the game, you do attacks with the Brotherhood sword, which is that blue sword that you see on the box there and in the art with Tidus. But your core special power is this one called Cheer, where you boost all of your teammates so they are doing more damage and they're getting more ability in. Yeah. And it also boosts your overdrive as well. So it really will be interesting to see how they get the +1/+1 counters going flavorfully and how we get moving them around.
Yeah, this is where we talked about this before coming in here today, and this is concept I introduced Gramps to of ludonarrative, which is this like game design term that is essentially the intersection of gameplay mechanics with story elements. So in this case, like the ludonarrative intersection of this deck is like the concept of passing the ball around in Blitzball being mirrored by moving +1/+1 counters around on magic cards.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is like, we'll get into the actual like text of the commander and what it is looking to do. But that's what's interesting the most to me about this deck. I haven't looked at the other 3 closely enough to know how much they're trying to mirror game mechanics, and also I've never finished a Final Fantasy game, so I wouldn't even know what to look for.
We got the perfect deck for 2 reasons.
Okay.
It's like, this is the one I play, and I fucking hate Farewell.
Great. This is going to be a good episode.
I think one of the really interesting things that I focused on when I first saw this deck, and that I'm hearing from you because you haven't looked at any of the cards, I've had a tertiary look. The keyword is add counters.
Yep.
Not add +1/+1 counters.
Okay.
So that is what this is something that I think that when you look at a deck and you're looking at add counters, you're thinking straight away +1/+1 counters are the way to go.
That's
so
most of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what other kind of counters are going down, if any. And when we're looking at improving the deck, what other counters can we put down?
Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, I'm having flashes of the Skullbriar deck I want to build, which is non-traditional counters.
Yeah, but there's no black in this.
No.
Because imagine if this was 4 colors with black, you could put Indominus Rex Alpha in.
Contagion.
Because they're all counters.
Yeah. You probably then have to play some Infect.
I mean, so this is going to be more structured than most of the episodes we do. Like, we already do pretty structured. We have our research time, then we go to the rest.
Yeah.
But we're going to try and follow a similar thing that we do for our ban list, a similar structure to our ban list episodes. But, obviously it's going to be very different. We're not just going to be looking at this deck and saying, here's what you can take out because it's $6 and here's the $400 you can put in to boost it up. We're looking at that Ludo narrative, and we're looking at interesting changes outside of just the fucking parallel lives and your doubling seasons, because it's counters straight out the gate.
Easy.
Yeah, your Vorinclexes.
Yes.
We're thinking
Oh
about
my God.
what else we can do about this. Because there's way more than just the cards. It's way more than just the colors. If I take out a white card and put a green card in, that changes the lands, that changes the mana totals, that changes all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we have to be really deliberate about what we're doing, not just get the junk out, put the crack stuff in.
Yeah, I think too, like the general idea behind this Precon Precon format is to take this deck, sort of look at the different combinations of cards that either are the key mechanic or that support the key mechanic, and then kind of group them in terms of like how much support is there for it, and then like how much is that supplemented with like card draw, ramp, all those other things that just make a deck in general work.
Yeah.
And just look at like, is there enough in the deck out of the box to make it satisfyingly hit what the commander wants to be doing?
Yes.
Because like historically, precons try to do a little too many things.
It's too wide.
You might have like you got your face commander, and in modern times like your alternate commander, and they kind of do different things, and that means the deck as a whole has kind of got this split focus.
Yeah.
So that's part of where this idea came from. Is like, let's look at like, could we focus it more and lean in more to what that face commander does?
And if it is already focused enough, how do we overdrive that?
Yeah, or like bolster it in other ways that give you like protection so you can do the thing that it wants to do. So why don't we start with the commander?
Let's start with the commander.
And then we can go and look into the rest of the deck from there.
So we've got Tidus, Yuna's Guardian. Okay. Tidus, the best Blitzball player for the Zanakin Abes. Never lost a game. World champions.
Okay, but what does the card say?
Dad left.
That's
jetched,
enough.
Gone.
What does the card say?
The cards, it's Bant, just it. Green, white, blue. That's the cost. Nice and cheap.
Okay.
Human Warrior as well is a 3/3. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control.
Hey, we're passing the ball already.
It's because he's the player.
Yeah.
He's the sport player.
Yeah.
And awesomely, Cheer is, how they did the same for Doctor Who, they did the same for 40k.
Named
they
ability.
The ability. Cheer. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. Do this only once each turn.
Delicious.
So you're only drawing one card, but you are proliferating everything.
Yeah.
And proliferate is great if you're poison counters.
We already mentioned it.
Sick. But this is immediately it's ticking the box of adding counters because you got that proliferate there in that secondary mechanic.
Yep.
It's card draw out the gate from that commander as well as long as you're attacking. combat damage
yeah.
to a player.
Yeah.
But we'll see how many creatures we get to do that with. I think that's really important is what evasion is there so we can get that combat damage in.
Yep.
And then we're moving instantly. Now, we're not moving a lot, but it feels, again, that Ludo narrative, it feels very typical of a player passing the ball to someone else.
So beginning of combat on your turn. So it's happening on a regular interval.
Yep, and it's happening in Tidus is the moving of the counter. So it's, Walker moving a counter through Tidus to Kamari.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like the general commanding the troops on the battlefield, like you give it over there.
Yeah,
and
the captain
score a
sitting
goal.
at centre half back, telling the centres to tap it down, get the clearance into the forward. AFL's a great sport. That's rad. That's immediate. It's not expensive. It
And
does
also,
what it says on the box.
From what you've told me just now about this video game, flavorful as hell.
Flavorful as hell.
Yeah.
He's too happy for someone whose dad left him at a young age, and that he has to kill eventually. But that's fine.
Pressing it all down.
I guess a massive heads up. Spoilers for Final Fantasy X if you haven't played this fucking 20-year-old game.
That's me. I haven't.
It's so worth playing.
But as is the tradition of the show, as soon as we leave this room, we forget what we said.
I fucking do every time. Now, do you want to look at the alternate commander as well, or are we just looking at them primary first?
Let's have a look at it. Yeah.
So the alternate commander is Yuna, Grand Summoner.
Okay.
Is Bant +1, so 1 green, white, blue. Is a 1/5 human cleric with the keyword effect Grand Summon. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. When you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. So there's your add counters. Whenever another
I will note that ability doesn't link that mana to that ability.
It's just
so if you had something that like let a creature be cast for free, it would still
just does it.
It would be the next time on your turn.
Exactly.
That's pretty
you
neat.
can use that mana to cast any kind of spell.
Sorry, this turn could be at any time.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay.
Whenever another permanent you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Oh, so if you're controlling your enemy's creatures as well. Wow. Put into the graveyard from the battlefield. If it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of +1/+1 counters on target creature.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
if your buffed up thing dies, you're not moving the +1/+1 counters.
You're putting that many.
You're putting that many on. So if you have something that when it dies moves counters, you're basically doubling them.
Yes.
If I have a creature with 60 counters on it that dies and says you can move these counters to another creature, I'm moving those 60 counters over there, and you're
getting 60 from Yuna.
Well.
That's also like the trick you can do with like the Ozolith and a counter doubler.
Yeah.
Because Ozolith says like move counters, but what that actually means is take that many off one and put that many on something else.
Yeah, okay.
And so you're in that same position of like, I'm putting this many on a thing and I have an effect that doubles it.
Yeah.
So you're
same as
you're
Tidus.
moving twice as many.
Because I guess with counting doubles, with Tidus, if
It's
you're moving.
So you remove 1 from something and then you
add it
put
to another one.
2.
Yeah, wow.
Because you remove 1, add 1.
That's rad.
Yeah,
Add one twice.
that's what moving counter does.
That's insane. Yeah. So the commanders, the secondary commander is not moving counters, but is adding counters in a very deliberate way.
Yes.
In 2 different ways. It's a mana dork. It's an expensive mana dork that adds more stuff.
Yeah.
And benefits if a creature dies. If you've got a token that you can chump with that has some counters on it, it shuffles. They're both doing the core mechanic. It's not really a focus on a primary or secondary, which is really good.
Yeah, it's different takes on the same idea of moving counters around for profit, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, now when we're looking at how we're going to categorize this deck, what are we looking at?
I think the first grouping I can think of is cards that add counters. Another grouping, like I don't know how much the like move or put counters kind of shows up. I think like put would probably fall under add.
Yeah.
But that idea of moving counters, seeing if there's like a lot of support for that in here. The other sort of like
I think that moving and putting are very different.
They are.
Yeah, because add and then shuffle.
Yes. The other side of the like add/move counter coin is what benefit are you getting from something having counters?
That's a big one as well. There's a lot of cards that do, creatures with counters have trample, creatures with counters have flying.
Or if it's something like when it deals combat damage, remove a counter and blank.
Do this thing.
Yeah.
Remove a counter, draw a card.
Yeah, like utility that you can get from having all these counters on your creatures. Those are probably the main ones. And then I think just like the thing that the trap a lot of counter-based decks fall into is a lack of card draw. Tidus already fixes that a little bit.
Yeah, base commander already does the card draw a bit.
Yeah, so I want to look to see how much card draw is in here.
And how do we amplify that card draw?
Well, see if it feels like enough.
Yeah.
You know, because like the benchmark in terms of like a commander deck, how many ramp pieces do you have in there? It seems to be around 10.
Yeah.
Just to like guarantee that you're not swamped with them, but also that you have a decent statistical chance of hitting one when you need it.
And you don't want a lot of just direct ramp either. You want your ramp spells to be doing other things for you later in the game.
Oh,
as well.
Ideally.
Like you start with your rampant growths and your Kadamas
If you get
and stuff like that.
rampant growth when you've already got 10 lands out, what's the fucking point?
Unless you're a landfall deck.
That's not what this is. That's not what this is.
Okay, so we're looking at our first tag is adding counters, and then the second tag, which is just as important, is moving counters.
Yeah.
And then I guess the third core thing we're looking at is has benefit from having counters.
It's essentially just like counter synergy. Like what utility can you derive from things having counters?
Yeah.
And hopefully we can find in there some stuff that like lets you draw cards or get mana, things like that.
And in a deck, so just looking at, there's 34 creatures in this deck. It's a very creature-heavy deck.
Yep.
And then just across the rest, 7 sorceries, 8 instants, 4 artifacts, and 9 enchantments. So very low numbers on the rest of the stuff. I guess,
I think seeing the high creature count, my first thought is like, based on the way Tidus works, what I'd expect to happen is like, you have something that puts a bunch of counters on one thing, Tidus starts shifting them one at a time around, and then when you hit that combat damage trigger, they all go up.
Yeah.
And so it's like the idea of like put 1+1 counter on each creature. That's a really powerful effect, usually quite expensive. This is getting you there sort of over time.
Tidus is a anti-capitalist champion about redistributing the wealth.
That's it. Yeah.
And then bring it up for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, I guess, is if we're seeing that high creature count with +1/+1 counters, we know that there's a lot of triggers that are when you add a +1/+1 counter, do X or do Y.
Yeah, or it's
so
like
we're expecting to see that on a lot of creatures.
Or like add that many +1.
Yes.
That shows up on a number of creatures, I believe.
Yeah, and I guess what if we're thinking about what kind of counters that we might be looking at, +1/+1 is a lot of them. What other counters are there? Stun counters,
shield counters, all the keyword ability counters. Then you get into weird stuff like Life Matrix, which adds a Matrix counter, but that's a card from like the 90s.
Neo glasses go on. We're gonna let Life Matrix.
And I only know about that because it's in the list for when I build Skullbriar.
Charge counters.
Charge counters.
That's a big one as
that
well.
would be big.
Yeah. So I guess
you get something like a power conduit in there, which is like counter manipulation, of like add or remove a counter to put a charge counter on it.
I guess let's look at some of these cards then.
Yeah, I think let's maybe group some of these together and come back and talk about what it looks like.
So we've spent some time on Moxfield tagging this deck. We're going to share the tagged deck list in the description as well, so you can see the way we've tagged it and have a look at it. Maybe it helps you upgrade the deck a bit or work on it. We've also had some stuff untagged. We'll get into that in a bit, but let's look at the tags that we've used first.
Yeah.
And the first tag that we've used is ads.
Yep.
Ad counters.
Yep.
Easy
That's
peasy.
It.
36.
Sorry, let me refresh because mine says 35, but yeah.
36.
36 is huge.
Cards, not just creatures, but cards that add counters in one way or another to either the individual card or to the other cards around.
Or cards opponents control.
Exactly. And we've got stun counters in there.
Shield counters
counters
flying
were in
counters.
there. There's a flying counter in there. There's +1/+1
It's
counters.
a lot of +1 counters.
Mostly +1/+1 counters.
Which you'd expect.
So yeah, 36. That is the core mechanic, and they have absolutely killed it.
I think, like thinking about the statistical likelihood of hitting this is like more than a third of the deck.
Yeah.
You're going to be consistently
getting to add counters in a way or another.
And remembering Tidus itself adds and moves counters around. So it's always available, but there's plenty of it in this deck.
Well, doesn't add. increases.
Yeah.
Which is another
Yes,
core word that we've
proliferate.
used.
Yeah.
It's, even though proliferating is adding counters, it doesn't add counters where they don't exist already.
Yes,
So
true.
I think it's really important that we have that delineation of, yes, it is adding counters, but they have to be there first. Whereas the ones that are adding counters, whether they're there first or not, they are going to put counters down.
Yeah. The nice thing too about the way Moxfield tags works, if you put multiple tags on a single card, it will show up multiple times in the deck view once under each tag that it's been applied.
Yeah, multiple spaces.
Yeah, so we will, like, when we share the deck list, like if you see cards showing up multiple times in the tag groups, that's why. It's because some of these cards are doing double or triple duty.
And you want that from the cards as well. You want them to be pulling double or triple duty.
There are some crazy cards in here,
Tidus
dude.
is doing draw and increases just in itself.
And move.
And move, yeah. Draw, increase, and move. It's doing triple duty as a commander should.
Yeah.
And it's doing all of the
as a
mechanics.
commander should these days. They didn't used to.
No, commanders used to be 15 to put it onto the battlefield and it's 4/4.
But yeah, like I'm really happy to see 36 cards that in some way add counters to permanence.
And then so our secondary mechanic being moves actually doesn't get a lot of support though.
No, but I think, like, what do we get to? 4?
5 with the commander. With the main commander.
That's what I was going to say. Like 4 excluding the commander is, I think, okay given how much adding counters there is, because you can't move what you don't have, so you need adding to be higher. But also the commander is always available.
I think I think I am going to recategorize Sin to add and move.
Yeah.
Because Sin does really move them once Sin dies. So it adds its utility.
Yeah, honestly, read Sin, because that card is wild.
Sin is the fucking best. And if I could, I probably will. I'm going to build this fucking deck.
Just Sin as
Just
a commander?
Sin as a deck.
Simic counters?
So rad, man. So Sin, Unending Cataclysm, 5 green and a blue. This card fucking rules. It's a Leviathan avatar. It's got flying and trample because Flample is rad. Take that, Zatolpa.
Yuck.
As Sin enters, remove all counters from any number of artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So you've got your charge counters from Everflowing Chalice. You've got
Sagas?
all your +1/+1 on counters. You've got your sagas. And it's not ones that you control.
No.
Remove all counters from any number. Your opponent's creatures counters and stuff like that as well. Battles.
Oh, no.
They're
They
counters.
Yeah, but it's not one of the named types. Battles are battles.
It's the death of battles again.
We can't.
Sin enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is twice the number of counters removed this way.
To be fair, it costs 7, but that's insane.
You can wipe the board of fucking counters, and then when it dies, take all of the counters. So if you've got 100 counters on Sin, take all 100 counters and put them on target creature you control, then shuffle it into your library, because you can never truly defeat Sin while people still live.
Damn.
And it's a 5/5 just on top of that.
Yeah.
Like base power 5/5. Base power 5/5, 7 cost 5/5.
So good.
Magic's dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is an insane card. One of the other ad cards that I really like that shows up in 2 areas. It's one of the only removal cards that is also doing ads, which actually I'm going to retag into control from removal.
Okay.
Because we changed the name removal to control. So you're seeing us do our tagging on the fly here as well.
Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying this.
Yeah. It's not perfect. We're working it out.
Hey, this is our first time doing this because we didn't expect to get all this really rad shit. Again, thank you, Wizards of the Coast.
Big
This
time.
is insane. Auron, Venerated Guardian. Auron was the coolest character to me in Final Fantasy X. Have you got him up? Have a look at his card art. Check out this fucking sick card art.
Dude, the high collar.
And the hanging arm.
But the sunglasses?
Yeah, man. And the giant sword.
Arm and a sling? Is that what it
Auron's
is?
fucking rad.
Is he just swinging that giant sword with one arm?
Yes, man.
What a psycho,
Auron's
dude.
rad, and he's the first character you meet. You combat with you and him to fight the luminous moths. If you look at them, the luminous brood moth. Have a look at them. They're the first enemies you fight.
Sure.
But Auron has vigilance for 3 and a white. Whenever Auron attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Sick. Adding counters goes in the ads category.
Love it.
And then the control side of it is when you do, exile target creature defending player controls with power less than Auron's power until it leaves the battlefield. That's control right there. This doesn't just go in this deck. This goes in Boros decks.
Yeah.
With Aurelia decks with extra combat turns.
Wow.
Like, this card is sick.
Yeah,
Same
dude.
with Sin going into Simic. And it's not just creatures, you know. Adds counters. Everflowing Chalice, we've put in the adds category because it adds charge counters.
Multi-kicker. Just
Multi-kicker
chuck a bunch of mana
sick.
into that thing.
Fight Rigging goes specifically in the add category because even after the Hideaway is completed, which
It keeps-
in this deck, super easily, it keeps adding counters.
Keeps adding them.
We've got Promise of Loyalty, which that photo on that card is the opening scene. Like when you go through the 10 minutes of being able to go into the main menu to start playing the game, because that's 10 minutes long. This is what you see with these little wisps going around.
Right.
So all of the weapons of the main characters. Each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control and sacrifices the rest. You're vowing to work with Yuna.
All right.
And then those creatures can't attack you. All planeswalkers you control for as long as it has a vow counter on it. That's just we've put another kind of counter down, and it's so rad.
Yeah.
It's the openings and the flavor text in this card because we have to showcase these fucking cards, but they're so good you can't not. The flavor text is the opening line of the game.
Okay.
Listen to my story. This may be our last chance. Tidus. And it's a wipe. There are 4 wipes in this deck.
Yeah, that's wild.
There's Bane of Progress, which is a destroy all artifacts and enchantments when it enters, and then put +1/+1 counter on it for each permanent destroy this way. So a wipe into adds.
Yeah.
We've got Damning Verdict, which is destroy all creatures with no counters on them. So
I've played Damning Verdict before.
Asymmetrical wipe.
Yep.
Such a rad asymmetrical wipe. There's that Promise of Loyalty, and then there's Farewell.
We didn't. Yeah. Well, we don't need to talk about Farewell.
But yeah, so we've got all of the ads. A lot of the ads are doing a lot of double duty.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. They're not just doing the core mechanic. They're doing something else.
A whole bunch of them are like add a counter and then maybe something happens as a result.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And then not a lot of move, but as we spoke about, like the commander will handle that, and you want less of that than you have the ability to add counters to stuff.
Now look, there's only one card we didn't really put a tag on because whilst it does some of the stuff, I think it's the weakest card in the deck in terms of doing the mechanic, which is Summoner's Sending. It's an enchantment. It's 1 and a white. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature card from a graveyard, so it can be your opponent's.
Yeah.
If you do, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Put a 1/1 counter on it if the card's exiled mana is 4 or greater.
It's a lot of conditional behavior.
Like, yes, it is a way to empty someone's graveyard, but also Bajuka Bog.
And I guess like it's offset by the fact that it's a 2-cost enchantment that will do this on every time you hit your end step.
But it's not doing much else either.
Yeah.
And it's relying on having graveyards to put stuff, take stuff out of, and then once you empty a graveyard or the graveyard's gone, if a Leyline of the Void is down, the card is switched off.
Yeah. I think like this was high on my list of things I would take out. But we'll get to that in a bit.
And then now the other untagged ones are the summons because they are quite complex. It's a saga,
do a lot.
which is counters already.
It's a saga that has counters, and they are all enchantment creatures.
Yes, they're so rad though. I love this design where they're immediately adding counters because they have the lore counters on them.
Yeah,
and then some of them are doing other stuff. So summon Ixion, which is like a zebra unicorn. Fucking
looks like
so sick. Zebra Striker from Pokemon. Anyway, look it up. Exile target creature an opponent controls until this saga leaves the battlefield. Sick. Immediately removal and is adds.
I'll remind you that there's a bunch of moving counters in this deck, so you could just stall that saga.
Keep the saga going.
Keep it on the field by continually removing a counter every turn from it.
Exactly.
So you just like exile some stuff and keep it going.
Yeah. Put a +1/+1 counter, and then the 2 and 3, so the second 2, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. You gain 2 life. It's adds.
Yeah.
It's adds again.
It's doing a bunch.
And it's removal, so it's control, and it's first strike. It's insane.
Yeah, looking at these, they all, I mean, they're sagas, so they all add counters, but they all seem to be adding counters to other things, and that's as far as it goes in terms of them interacting with counters.
Yeah. And Ixion is the second summon you get, I'm pretty sure, in the game, because you get summons as Yuna. So the second summon that's in this list, just going in the order of the list, I guess, is a green one, 4 and a green, summon Mega Sisters. It's got 3 lore things on it, but they all do the same thing. And it's a 5/5 with haste.
Hang on. It says choose one at random.
Yeah. So you're rolling a d6 and then halving it, I guess.
Yeah, because you got 3 options.
3 1/1 counters on target creature. Adds.
Cool.
Put a shield counter on target creature, you gain 3 life. Adds again.
Yep.
And then, so that's combined powers, putting the 1/1 counters. That's defense, so putting shield counters.
Yep.
And then fight. This creature fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls, which I think is the worst.
We didn't really have a tag for that.
I didn't really want that.
No.
But also I don't want that. But then again, it's adding lore counters.
Yes.
So cool. Summon Baleful, 4 and a blue. So Summon Ixion was 3, Mega Sisters is 5, Baleful is 5 in terms of its cost. Summon Baleful has 4 modes on it. 4
steps.
4 steps, sorry.
4 chapters.
4 chapters in its saga.
Chapter 1.
And we'll get into the ludonarrative thing in a second of all of these, but Veil 4, Sonic Wings. Each opponent chooses a creature with the greatest mana value among creatures they control. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. So removal of the big things on the battlefield.
Yeah, kind of control effect.
And then 2, 3, and 4 is tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it.
Okay.
So not just putting lore counters on Veil 4, putting again stun counters on opponents' creatures.
Yeah.
Or even your own creatures if you want to, if there's something that benefits with that.
Yeah.
And then it's got flying as well. Because why not? 5/4.
5/4 flying. Yeah, Saga Drake.
And the final one is Summon Yojimbo.
Yojimbo.
Yojimbo!
What is his name? That's crazy.
4 chapters again. Does a lot more than the other ones.
Yeah,
it's a 5/5 with vigilance as well for 3 and a white. Exile target artifact, enchantment, or untapped creature an opponent controls.
Tapped creature.
Oh, sorry, tapped creature.
Yeah.
Exile target artifact, enchantment, or tapped creature an opponent controls. And then 2 and 3 are until your next turn. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each of those.
Just a ghostly prison.
Ghostly
for
prison.
2 turns.
Norn's Annex, but without the pain.
Yeah.
And then 4 is create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of opponents who control a creature with power 4 or greater.
So you're getting at most 3.
But you are benefiting for putting +1/+1 counters on your opponent's creatures.
I mean, it's a 4-cost enchantment, and you have to wait for chapter 4. That's just going to happen. In Commander,
happens.
like people playing big creatures will happen by the time you get there.
Even if you get there at all, because that's the big thing, right?
Yeah.
So in the game, these summons come in, they stick around for a little bit, and they go.
Oh, like a Saga.
Literally, Baleful's fucking rad.
Yeah.
Okay. It was the only one I used because it looked the coolest.
Yeah.
It's like a big old bird with titties.
You're so right.
Baleful's fucking sick.
Yeah.
And then had like this really cool overdrive, like did a fucking beam and then pew.
Yeah.
And
okay.
It was rad.
Sick.
So the deck is doing all its cool thing, and even the sagas are doing a lot of that. They're just more complex, but I think it's really important we show them off because all of them are fucking sweet.
Yeah. And then, so I've talked about like adding and moving counters. Then we categorized ones that sort of increase counters.
Or utility as well.
Yeah, well, like the utility we'll get to in a sec, but the increases, we found like 5 of those. The real obvious example that people have probably seen before is Hardened Scales. 1 green for an enchantment. If 1 or more +1 counters will be put on a creature you control, that many +1 are put on it instead.
Yeah.
So the idea with this grouping is like counters are happening, what makes it happen more? And that's where we put the cards that feature proliferate. And there's 4 of these?
Yeah, there's because Lulu's in there.
Yeah. We don't need to go through all of them. But yeah, so like that's leaning into that idea of like, we've got a lot of things that add counters. Once we have them, what are we doing with them? This is one way that we use them.
I think it is really important we do show off at least Lulu for this as one of the core characters in the party from the game. Lulu Stone Guardian, 2 and a blue, so 3 cost for a human wizard. Whenever an opponent attacks you, choose target creature attacking you, put a stun counter on that creature.
Yeah.
So like, you've attacked me with 4 things. That one is going to get a stun counter.
So it still attacks. Yeah. It just means it won't untap on the next turn.
And then for 3 and a blue, proliferate.
Yeah.
Simple. Very simple. Luna is so rad. I don't think it really...
Stun counters, do they keep it tapped indefinitely?
No. Once the stun counter's gone, the next upkeep it untap.
Yeah,
but
when does the stun counter come off?
At each upkeep.
Okay.
Oh, I actually don't know that.
Let me double check.
Yeah. The only thing is, if we're looking at the narrative of the game, Lulu in this isn't doing what Lulu does in the game. Lulu is just a black mage in the game. So she is the one that does the fire magic, the ice magic, all that kind of stuff, and is more for the enemies that have types. She's not really doing this here, but she is strict. She is icy, and I think that works for the stuns.
To clarify, stun counters, like one counter adds the effect. If a permanent with a stun counter on it would become untapped, instead remove a stun counter from it. So if you have multiple, but if you have multiple stun counters, you take them off one by one.
Yeah, and then proliferating.
But it's also like any time it would become untapped. So if you've got an effect that lets you untap creatures, you could just do that.
Yeah, and then utility.
Yeah, so utility was kind of this idea of like, assuming you've got counters on things, what benefits does that give you?
Yeah. If you've got counters on things, or if things get +1/+1 counters to give you a benefit, they might not specifically add them.
Yeah,
but getting them benefits.
So one I want to call out, and you can tell me more about it, is Sphere Grid. 1 and a green for an enchantment that says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. So that's adding counters again. But then we've got Unlock Ability. There's a named ability on this card. Creatures you control with +1 counters on them have reach and trample.
So good.
Yeah, so that's that idea of like creatures that have counters are getting these abilities applied to them. That's where the utility is coming from.
I spent hours and hours staring at a sphere grid trying to work out, because it's not just a linear, hey, you get this benefit, you get this buff. It branches out and really lets you build your characters.
It's like the Path of Exile skill tree.
Yeah, basically. it is. Except 20 years old, clunky, and oppressive when you're 10 years old, looking at it being like, what do I do?
This is intimidating.
Very much.
Yeah.
Had amazing music and amazing sound effects, though.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And the unlock ability, there's way more abilities on the sphere grid, but this just gives everyone a buff.
Yeah,
which is
it's a particular
what the sphere grid is doing.
It's a particular ability.
Characters.
The other one that I kind of like, because it's starting to branch out into other things you can do in this deck, is Gaia Sage. 1 and a green for an elf druid at 1/2 with Evolve. Whenever a creature you control enters, if it has greater power or toughness than the Gaia Sage, put a +1 counter on Gaia Sage. So that's, again, adding counters.
Yep.
But it has the ability, tap, add green for each +1 counter on this creature.
Yeah.
So if you've got, it's coming in at a 1/2, and either power or toughness being greater will result in a +1 counter going on it.
Yeah.
So if all these things are entering with counters on them, they're coming in big, chances are Gaia Sage is going to get a ton of counters on it, and you're tapping it for a huge amount of green mana.
Yeah. looking through the deck, though, there's not a lot of creatures that are bigger just on their base power and toughness than Gaia Sage.
Yeah.
So you are relying on things entering with more +1/+1 counters being
or again like all of those cards adding counters and then proliferating and moving. All you need to do is put a lot of them on Gaia Sage, and you've got a big old fat load of mana.
So now I guess the final thing is looking at this deck and what adjustments we would make to it.
So I think looking purely at the numbers, of the cards that we've tagged utility, there's 13, which I think is a pretty good kind of level.
Benefits from +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, and a lot of them are also doing other things. Like we see Sin show up in there that we talked about before.
And we've actually got 11 spells that draw.
Yeah, that's what I was going to look at.
Which is outside of the utility space. Some of them are doing utility and draw. But if it draws, we want it in its own tag.
Yeah, and Tireless Tracker is creating clues.
Yes,
and so that is eventually card draw.
Yeah, it gives access to draw, so that's good enough to us.
Yeah. So
we're benefits from fucking drawing from the clues.
Yes. Yeah, you get the counters.
Adds.
But yeah, we've got 9 ramp pieces in here, at least as far as we see it.
Yeah.
Card draw, looking at 11, like you said. I'm not mad at those numbers, honestly.
This deck is really well constructed.
Yeah. As I said at the start, counter decks often fall down at card draw because all your effects are just putting counters on things and nothing else really happens, and then you're running out of things to do.
So if I was going to be looking, say I did want to put a little bit more draw in it consistently. Say I was taking out an Arcane Signet.
Sure.
Or, if I'm taking out that enchantment, the Summoner's Sending enchantment,
Mm-hmm.
what am I looking up if I want something that draws but also has counters?
Tome of Legends.
Righto, you're already there. I'm guessing that's a colorless artifact?
Yep.
4 or 5?
2.
Far out. Well,
It is a 2-cost artifact. I fucking love this card. Tome of Legends enters the battlefield with a page counter on it.
No. Oh, there we go. Another counter.
Yep.
Fuck yes.
Whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on it. 1 and tap, remove a page counter from Tome of Legends, draw a card.
That's rad.
Yeah, I love this card in like counter decks or things where you know the commander is going to be like entering or attacking a lot. It's just super useful. It's a good little guy. But if I was looking more generally, like, okay, we're in Commander, so F:C, color identity is Bant.
Yep. And you can actually write the word Bant as well, and it will do it for you.
I think what I like to use, there's a Scryfall tag repeatable draw, which, you can get instants and sorceries that'll let you like impulse draw, but what I really like is stuff like Tome of Legends, where it's a permanent, sits on the battlefield, gives you, like the tag suggests, like repeatable access to card draw.
Yeah.
And then I think, I'm going to try and do this off the top of my head, if I type synergy-counter, we'll see what comes up for both of those.
And I think just one of the big things at the top of my dome is an offer you can't refuse is a 1-cost counter that looks specifically at non-creature spells and then is creating a token for your opponent. And I think if we're looking at counters that benefit your opponents that have more utility, I personally would change an offer you can't refuse for something like Arcane Denial.
Yeah, card draw.
Which is 1 and a blue, counter target spell, so it broadens it out, and then its controller may draw up to 2 cards at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, which is a very banty group hug kind of thing, but then draw a card at the beginning of the next turn upkeep for yourself, which lets you have that draw as well.
Yeah. So the combination of repeatable draw and synergy-counter gave me 0 results. So I broadened that a bit. So what I'm looking for is the Scryfall tag repeatable draw, and then just looking in the Oracle text for the word counter. 112 options.
Fire out.
Just this like default alphabetical search. I'm going to give you one that stood out immediately. Arcane Spyglass.
Nice. Yep.
4-cost artifact. 2 tap, sacrifice a land, draw a card and put a charge counter on it. You just need to get 1 on there and then you can proliferate that, because the other thing that it does, remove 3 charge counters from it to draw a card.
Oh, yeah, rad.
That's it.
Sick.
No tap, nothing. So that could be useful. There's
actually another one in that will be in that lot. Bounty of the Luxor. A really cool card that was reprinted recently in 2x2, so which it's 2022, 3 years ago, but it's 2 green, blue for an enchantment. So taking that enchantment slot, it is a bit more expensive, but beginning of your pre-combat main phase, remove all flood counters. So another type of counter from Bounty of the Luxor. If no counters were removed this way, put a flood counter on it and then draw a card. Otherwise, add colorless green and blue. So you add it's ramp because you're getting 3 mana, or it's draw and it's counters.
Yeah.
So when you're removing a flood counter, so you're putting the flood counter on it and then you're drawing a card, or you're removing and you're adding the colors.
Right.
So when you're proliferating, you get to choose, do I want to put another flood counter on Bounty of the Luxor? It's actually quite a diverse utility in this deck. I think it's a huge addition for not a huge cost.
True. I think the temptation might be to add Toxic to this deck, to add Infect, to add Poison. Yeah. I think that sucks. And I don't think anyone should do that.
Take out. Okay, hear me out for a second. Who's a character we don't care about? Farewell. Take out Farewell. Put in Venerated Rot Priest. It is more fun. Venerated Rot Priest, just for everyone out there, is the best card that Magic has ever invented. It's a 1-cost Phyrexian Druid, green, and it says whenever a spell targets a creature you control, put a poison counter on target opponent.
Right.
I think it says that verbatim, but it's what it does. And it's like a 1/4 druid or 1/3 druid. It's fucking rad.
Yeah.
And because you're not, it's whenever a spell or an ability targets a creature you control.
Right.
Now, there's not a lot that you're doing to target your creatures individually because it's a lot of wide putting +1/+1 counters down, but it's a lot of protection from your stuff from other opponents because they're going to think twice about, am I targeting their spell if the Venerated Rot Priest is down?
Yeah.
Play poison.
To give you a couple of other options from here, one is from Lord of the Rings.
Oh.
Goldberry, River Daughter.
Rad. 1
in a blue for a 1/3 nymph. Has 2 abilities. One is just tap Goldberry. Move a counter of each kind not on Goldberry from another target permanent you control onto Goldberry. So if you end up with one creature, say, having multiple types of counters on it, you can take one of each of them, put it on Goldberry. And then the second ability is blue and tap. Move 1 or more counters from Goldberry onto another target permanent you control if you do draw a card. So it's kind of doing a bit of everything there.
Yeah, that's rad.
That's pretty sick.
I think the last card I'm going to recommend for an addition to spice it up a little bit. Now, the theme, I guess, from what I'm sensing from our theme here is how do we add a different type of counter to the deck as well, if we can. Not even just for draw, but we're looking at the draw stuff. Commence the End Game, which is a card from Roar of the Spark. It's quite expensive.
Okay.
It's 4 blue for an instant. This spell can't be countered.
Good start.
Awesome. Void Rend, get fucked. Draw 2 cards, then amass X.
Oh.
So we're amassing. Where X is the number of cards in your hand. And just a reminder for what amass is, put X +1/+1 counters, so adds counters, on an army you control.
Yeah.
If you don't control one, create a 0/0 black zombie army creature token first. So we're
Blitzball zombies?
we're getting +1/+1 counters.
Yeah.
But we're getting
That's
+1/+1
weird.
counters still, but we're getting it in another way, and they're movable. So we're getting some amass in here.
Now you said weird counters. From Legends, and only from Legends.
I'm excited.
Life Matrix. I think I mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
4-cost artifact. 4 and tap. Put a matrix counter on target creature, and that creature gains. Remove a matrix counter from this creature. Regenerate this creature. That's what the matrix counter gives it. You can only do that. You can only activate the ability of Life Matrix during your upkeep. But it's like, okay, regeneration. Why not? Get that in there. The other one I was going to mention before, Stocking the Pantry. It's uncommon from Bloomburrow. It costs a single green for an enchantment. Whenever you put 1 or more +1 counters on a creature you control, put a supply counter on Stocking the Pantry. And for 2, and remove a supply counter from Stocking the Pantry, draw a card.
That's rad.
So if we've got some of these effects that are putting a lot of counters on multiple creatures, that's going to put a ton of supply counters onto Stocking the Pantry, which you can then proliferate. And then it's 2 mana and 1 counter to draw a card. Cool.
Now, the one thing I think, and it's the last thing I've got to say about this deck fucking rules.
Yeah.
I wish, and this is only because I want Venerated Rot Priest to come down.
Stop.
I wish there were a way for me to move a counter from one opponent to another opponent.
That's yuck. Wait, I think there is.
Not in this deck.
No, not on this deck, but like, I think I've seen it with regards to poison counters.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Like that would be sick to be in there. But
Yuck.
that's just me wanting, poison counters in there. I'm glad there's no poison counters in this, but it would be rad if there was.
Yeah.
So I guess when we're looking at this deck and what we're talking about, and if you're going to an LGS and you're bringing the deck out and someone's like, oh, I haven't seen that, what does it do? You say, first of all, tells the narrative of Final Fantasy X very well. It's really in the lore and I have abandonment issues. Then you say, look, this adds counters. Primarily.
Yeah.
Not just to the creatures that I have, but to your creatures everywhere. It's all about counters and then making them bigger and then doing stuff with them.
Yep.
And it's really to the T. It's a very what you see is what you get deck.
Yeah.
WYSIWYG.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will look at this deck and assume you're just going to get massive creatures and go swinging. And that's where you say, actually, no.
There's way more.
The like secondary and tertiary mechanics are moving counters around and benefiting from counters. So it's less about making giant creatures and going to town. It's more about like, I'm going to just do some interesting stuff, passing these resources around.
And I guess the final question I have for you is, how does this deck win?
I think Like it probably does eventually end up in a situation where it's big creatures swinging.
Big creature do damage. And
also
stop your opponents from blocking.
Yeah, thinking about like you've got stun counters in there, and you can then proliferate those to keep everybody locked out. You could have something like Sin come in and like if other people are playing counters decks, wipe them. I think I can't see a stronger kind of path forward other than like make some giant shit and hit people.
I agree.
Which I don't love, but
it is a winning.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Helix Pinnacle. Put that in there.
What is Helix Pinnacle?
I'm gonna find it.
Yeah, and clearly, there's Ozolith, there's Doubling Season. These are the ones that we know. We don't really want to talk about, not because we don't think they're not good, but they are the topics.
Yeah.
What is Helix Pinnacle?
Single green for an enchantment. First printed in Eventide. It has Shroud. For the cost of X, put X tower counters on Helix Pinnacle. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 or more tower counters on Helix Pinnacle, you win the game.
Millennium Calendar as well. 1,000 counters.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, no, Millennium Calendar doesn't even win you the game, right?
I don't know.
Let me find it.
When we've got 1,000 counters.
For reference, Millennium Calendar is a 1-cost legendary artifact. Whenever you untap one or more permanents during your untap step, put that many time counters on it. 2 and tap, double the number of time counters on the Millennium Calendar. When there are 1,000 or more time counters on the Millennium Calendar, sacrifice it, and each opponent loses 1,000 life. So
if that doesn't win the game, I don't fucking know what does.
I've seen higher than 1,000 on a life total before.
And there's also the last silly one, because we've got to wrap this episode up. Yeah. Book of Exalted Deeds. Put a counter on an angel. So you need an angel in there as well. It's white, white. Put a counter on an angel that says opponents can't win the game and you can't lose the game.
And when at beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life, you create an angel. So
proliferate that counter so you just can't fucking lose. Come on.
Okay, yeah. So there are some like
there's some fun ways to add stuff.
There are some direct win conditions you could put in.
You can put in, and those are the direct win conditions you could
out of the
put
box.
In. But out of the box, it's just big creatures.
It's just go to town, which I guess is the game of Blitzball. Eventually, someone's got to win with a higher score. I assume. I've never played.
Exactly. You'd think that it's actually about style points. And if you liked this, thank you so much, Wizards of the Coast, for giving us again all of this really cool product.
Yeah.
If you like this deck, if you like the tags, go to the description, look at the tags of the deck that we've got for you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Wizards, for sending this product. And there's going to be even more cool stuff coming out. So keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
Watch us.
We had to get one.
Had to get one.